Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So this morning I was listening to Boyce Watkins' video about the travel ban and about whether or not African Americans should be concerned about it. And I just wanted to share my thoughts. One of the first things that I'll focus on is this issue of intersectionality. Boyce Watkins basically said, well, if you focus on intersectionality, you will become marginalized. Black people will become marginalized as a group. And he expressed concerns about other people putting their same issues on the same level as black people's issues. For instance, white immigrants to this country trying to compare their experience to the experience of African Americans, or other groups in similar positions trying to say that they're on an equal footing in terms of the level of suffering that they have endured. And he also talked about how when people get focused on intersectionality, they begin to lose a sense of their own identity. So you have young people that more so identify with these other groups than they identify with their own group. So those were some of the points that he made about intersectionality. And, I just want to respond this way. First of all, just by recognizing that certain issues intersect, that doesn't necessarily mean that someone is saying, well, other people's issues are on the same level as our issues. So that's the first point that I want to make. Because obviously the plight of a white immigrant to America is not comparable to the plight of black people. The plight of a Hispanic immigrant to this country is not the same as the plight of African American people. In fact, African American people are in a unique position. I mean, we suffer from a peculiar history of slavery. No other people have experienced what we have experienced. Now you have the Native Americans who have went through a genocide, similar to what we've experienced. And in some ways, you could say that it's arguably worse in terms of the numbers of Native peoples killed. But the point is this. The issue is not whether or not these people have suffered to the same degree that we have. That's not the issue. This is not an oppression Olympics where we're competing to see who suffered the most. This is about trying to find common ground. Here you have other groups of people being discriminated against by the same group of people that are discriminating against us. It is only in our interest to work together with those people against a common enemy, a common threat. Now, you talked about self-interest, and I think that is a very valid point. Everyone should be motivated by self-interest. Every group of people should be thinking about their interests first. And, that's obvious. And groups should try to obtain power so they are not dependent on other groups. I agree with that 100%. But also, it is in people's best interest to work with others so that you can get policies implemented that benefit African American people. We need to have collaborations. Many times, civil rights legislation doesn't get passed just with black people. It's passed through coalitions with others. It's passed by working with politicians of different races. It's passed by working with other groups that have different membership base. It's passed through coalitions between labor, various white liberal groups, African American groups, and immigrant groups. That's how important legislation gets passed. So, this notion that it's not in our interest to work with others, it's just foolish. When we are 13% of the population, as you pointed out, it is necessary for us to collaborate with others. And we should collaborate based on mutuality, as I said in my very first video on this subject, and reciprocity. I agree with that point 100%. But if we sit on the sidelines when something like this happens, something that is so discriminatory on its face, then we can't expect others to have any kind of compassion for us when we have no compassion for other people, when we have no compassion for the plight of immigrants, when we have no compassion for the plight of religious minorities, Muslims in particular. How can we expect any of those groups to have any kind of compassion for us? We expect people to have compassion for us, to be concerned about our plight, but yet we want to have a detached, cold, and careless attitude when it comes to the lives of others. That just doesn't make any kind of logical sense. You know, I agree that we should, strengthen up ourselves, set our agenda. And many of the groups that work in coalitions do that all the time. I mean, these groups, like civil rights groups, they have an agenda. They have resolutions stating their positions on various issues. They are clear on their position on the issues. And I think a lot of the people that talk like Boyce Watkins, they don't know what they're talking about. I mean, this brother is not an organizer. He's somebody that promotes entrepreneurship. He's not a political organizer. He doesn't have experience trying to literally try to pass legislation. He doesn't have experience literally organizing people to affect any kind of real life change in this world. So he doesn't have experience working with other groups. Anybody that does have that experience, they know that coalitions make change. Coalitions are able to affect better progress in society when they work together. And, that's just crucial to any kind of change. And it's important to note that this is only the beginning. I mean, this travel ban is just the beginning. These 7 countries are just the beginning. If we don't stop Trump now, it's going to affect us, black people, at some point. This is only a part of the process. He has all these measures and positions that are against immigrants, against Muslims, against Hispanics, against women, against black people. All of these groups are adversely affected by this man's policies. It's only intelligent that these groups will gather and work together. And this whole issue of Muslims is very important because a large segment of the Muslim population in America is African American, like myself. I'm a Muslim, and there's a lot of African American Muslims in this country. This travel ban, while it doesn't affect people who live in this country who are American citizens, it's only the first part of the process. Because during the campaign trail, there were ideas floated about monitoring Muslims more thoroughly, Muslim mosques, and communities. There was talk about a possible Muslim registry and other measures. Talk about closing mosques. These types of ideas were floated, and that's only the beginning. If he gets away with this travel ban, who's to say what's next? And who's to say what impact it will have on African American Muslims who make up a substantial percentage of the African American community? This brother talked about Minister Louis Farrakhan during his video, talking about Minister Louis Farrakhan and how he worked with Minister Louis Farrakhan and all this and that. Well, these discriminatory measures that Trump is trying to implement will affect African American Muslims like the brother Minister Louis Farrakhan and like myself. So this is not something that's in isolation from the black experience or from black people. This is only the beginning of the process. And it's important to note, as I did in my last video, 3 of those countries that are banned are African countries. 2 of them are black African countries. And the other one has a significant black population. So this affects black people. I mean, this hands-off approach that people like Boyce Watkins have, I think that it's detrimental. It's like me saying, well, I don't care about those the black girls who were kidnapped by that terrorist group Boko Haram. What have they done for me? I mean, it's that what have they done for me mentality that leaves this world in chaos and destruction. I mean, it's that same kind of attitude that allowed that massacre, that genocide to occur in Rwanda. And it's that same kind of attitude that allowed the genocide against Native people. It's the same kind of attitude that allowed the enslavement of us. It's the same kind of attitude that allowed the Holocaust in Germany to occur. And I refuse to be a part of that. I will use my voice to speak out against all forms of injustice.